Hey guys, it is Sunday, August 17th, 2025. It is 1:10 p.m. in the afternoon. I've been trying to do this throughout the weekend, but obviously, a lot of things come up, and when you get to know someone that you live with and how the routine is, it's, kind of, one of those situations to where you just get a little distracted, you're not sure what's going on, so on and so forth. But with that said, I did want to come on here and let you know that this past Friday, the 15th, was the last day of what I look at as the official, well, not official, but usually annual summer break session. And for those of you that have been following me for 17 plus years, you know what that means. For those of you that are new, I've mentioned it before, but real quick summary, basically long story short, is on the second week of June, that serves as the last week for the matriarch and her fellow 10-month employees. Then after that, they will be off for 2 months until about mid to late August. Then they go back, which is tomorrow, the 18th. Now, the reason this is an annual yearly thing is because with any content creators of any kind, no matter what the platform that they primarily use, if they live with family, of any kind, married, aunts, uncles, grandparents, parents, you name it, siblings, if they live with any family of any kind, or even friends, like in a dorm situation, basically they have to find the opportunities that are out there to basically provide content. And sometimes they have to create content, that they will upload and have premiere weeks in advance. So it's one of those situations to where basically during this time of year, content creators like myself, we have to work around that. We have to find opportunities. For me, I've tried to basically successfully and not so successfully try to upload and set to premiere weeks and months in advance content for you guys during these break times. But sometimes I'll not have the opportunity to get a whole, let's say, month's worth or 2 months worth of content in there. So what will happen is basically I will have to find opportunities. And yes, I have found more opportunities, more so than I ever have in the past few years, including this year. But still, it is kind of tricky because you never know when you might be needed for something. And that's the whole situation with me. I mean, when I first tried to do this back on Friday, I had to pause a couple of times because I wasn't sure exactly if I was needed for something or I was being called for something or whatever. So, yeah, basically, to get to the point, this Monday, tomorrow, things will essentially be back to what I would consider semi-normal. Now, for those of you that have followed me for 17 plus years, you know what that means. For those of you that don't, again, I'll explain, little quick summary. Basically, the first 2 weeks, the Monday through Friday portion of the week, for the matriarch and her fellow 10-month teachers, those serve basically not as the first 2 weeks back, but they serve as their, I guess you could say, re-acknowledgement weeks. Basically getting to re-know the system, getting to know some of the new tricks that they'll be taught, and everything, new methods, being retaught, retrained, so on and so forth. They got things like health fairs they do, house visitations, parent-teacher conference to follow up on those house visitations, Zoom conferences, Zoom training conferences, you name it. They have, they primarily have to do it. CPR, stuff like that. They primarily have to do it, as well as get physical examinations, if not shots and everything that are necessary. But that's primarily what these first 2 weeks, starting tomorrow, Monday through Friday wise, is going to be like. Now, when I say back to semi-normal, and this is for those that are new, basically every year, for any of you that might be, let's say, in this degree or in this field, this category field of teaching or whatever, every year, basically, the teachers and the staff overall, get a schedule change. Sometimes the schedule, the clock in, clock out schedule will remain as it was previously, but sometimes it will change. Last year, the schedule had them going in at 8 o'clock, getting off at 4:30. Here, this year, you can basically add on a half hour more basically to that. You can add on you can add on minus a half hour more, or add on a half, depending on how you look at it, basically add a half hour more, but minus the initial half hour from last year. Let's put it that way. So instead of like 8 to 4:30, it is now 8:30 to 5. And basically, what does that mean for me? Well, I'll get into that in a moment. But what does that mean for the back to semi-normal? Well, just like the last week of the school year, which is in the second week of June, basically the first 2 weeks back, the Monday through Fridays, you take that 5 o'clock, and maybe even to an extent that 8:30 clock in and that 5 o'clock clock out with a grain of salt. Because as I mentioned, they got all these things they got to do, as well as set up the classrooms before September 2nd, because that's when they will get the pre-K students back in, or if not in for the first time. So they got to go through all this, just to get things ready. They got to go through all this just to get these things, just to get the school year ready. And what that means when it comes to, mostly the clocking out and sometimes the clocking in, is they might be advised, as far as the clock in goes, to come in maybe a half hour later. Because again, it's the first 2 weeks, or maybe even 2 hours later because it's the first 2 weeks. Or if it comes to the clocking out, they might be told, hey, you got ahead of yourselves when it comes to this training or the health fair, this or that. And they might say, okay, since you're ahead of yourself, we'll let you out by an hour, or we'll let you out by a half hour, maybe even at the most an hour and a half. And that basically, for someone like me, would be a little bit thrown offish, because basically I'd be thrown off my game. Like, let's say I'm doing what I'm doing now, and then all of a sudden it could be 4 o'clock. Could be like 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon, and then up the walkway comes. I should say. I'm trying to find the right way to say this. Up the walkway comes the matriarch. So. It's one of those situations to where it's like, basically you take the clock, the clock in, but mostly the clock out time frame of 8:30 and 5, mostly the 5, with a grain of salt, and you put quotations in between it because, basically you don't really know what's going to actually happen. And like I said, it's very, very similar, very, very similar to the last week of the school year, which is the second week in June. But what does that mean for me? Well, basically for me, if I'm working, I shouldn't have too much to worry about. I shouldn't, unless something comes up. Now, pray I do get into the new SB coffee place here in Newman. SB short for, again, one of the more, well, not again, but SB short for one of the more popular, if not the most popular brand of coffee out there, and you know what that is. Or pray I get back into the distributing center I was in for the past 2 holiday seasons. One of those two are going to help me out in a big, big way. Because not next week, but just today, I ended up getting an email from EDD basically having me certified for the 1 week that I had remaining, which was this past week. So basically what that means now is I have 0 coming in until next April. But hopefully I'll be working before then. But like I said, ladies and gentlemen, basically what that means for me, when it comes to work scheduling, is I shouldn't have too much of a interruption, if you will, too much of a situation to where I'm, basically going to have to be on my guard. Because if I'm working, fine, that keeps me busy, and let's say I'm out at the distributing center and all that, and I get off, and that kind of situation happens, not an issue. But if I'm working at the SB place, depending on the scheduling there, that's a different story as well. Because if I work, let's say, opening to, let's say, 9 in the morning at the earliest, part-time, 4.5 hours, good to go. If I'm there till 11, 6 hours, good to go. 1, good to go. So it's basically one of those kind of situations. But, yeah, basically, again, the clock in, but mostly the clock out time frame for these next 2 weeks you take with a grain of salt, as well as you put into quotations. That is until the 2nd. That is until you get to September 2nd, when things will get back to normal, and you can take the metaphor of grain of salt, or that saying of a grain of salt, as well as the quotations away from the 5 o'clock and even the 8:30 time frame, and be like, okay, we're good to go, we're fine, things are as they should be. Even if I'm working, things will be as they should be, because again, it won't affect me too much. But there is something interesting though. Now, maybe this was just the matriarch talking. Excuse me. But she basically made it sound like that there's a good chance, and she's been doing this talk more so in this past summer, or this past summer break, than I think ever before, and even before it. But there's a good chance this could be the last year she'll be working there. She'll be working at the pre-K place that she's at, because she is now highly, more so than ever, contemplating retirement, if not lessening the schedule. Now, what that means basically for me is if I'm working full time, basically I'm kept on, not let go or anything like that. If I'm kept on, what that means for me basically is that I'll be the only one working, of course, but primarily my content creation schedule will be definitely, more of a when and where I could do it kind of deal. Once that moment happens. Not saying it will, because if the matriarch believes she can keep going, she's going to keep going. But she might have to lessen the schedule. I mean, a lot of folks have suggested to her, at least I've suggested to her, maybe going more part-time. And I'm not necessarily, saying, oh, go in there at the time you're supposed to, but get off at 12. No, I'm not saying that. That's a waste. What I'm suggesting more along the lines is kind of take certain days to work and certain days off. Basically, for example, do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, for work, and take Tuesday and Thursday off. Easy. It puts less pressure on the car, and it puts less pressure on her. But that's just me. But point is, she has talked about that more so than ever before. The matriarch has talked about that more so than ever before. But again, it's up to her, and it's up to where God is going to place her. And that's the truth. But yeah, as far as how it's going to concern me, if I'm working, it won't be that big of a deal. But if I'm not working and everything, still it won't be that big of a deal. But pray I do get work at either the SB coffee shop here in Newman, or back at the distributing place in Patterson that I was for the past 2 years. Now, with that said, what has it been like over this past summer? It's been interesting. I will say that. I mean, yes, I was able to provide content with you guys that I set, that I uploaded and set to premiere, in the weeks that followed the break, following the break when it started. So I had that covered. And I did try to provide you with some extra content. But of course, over time, I kind of fell off. And basically, I had to find opportunities when I could to give content to you like I'm doing now. But overall, it's not been that bad. It's not been that bad of a summer. It's been a very birthday-filled summer. Excuse me, I will say that. It's been a very birthday-filled summer. We had birthdays in July, we had birthdays at the end of June, birthdays now here in August. It's been birthday mania, we'll put it that way. I mean, June was, at the end of June, was basically my great nephew, if you will. And then July was my oldest nephew. And then was mine. Then was my niece's fiance. And my middle siblings, my middle sister's husband, my brother-in-law. As well as my uncles, and so on and so forth. And then here in August, we just did my great niece's birthday yesterday at her father's parents, if you will, her father's parents, if you will, or at least his dad and his stepmom. So we did a party there. And then today is my niece, my oldest out of all my, the oldest, I should say, out of all of them. You know, my niece, my oldest niece, she is 33 today. Bless, thank God for that. Bless the Lord. Thank you, God, for blessing her with 33 years. But she is 33 today. And then next week, a week from tomorrow, is my mom, is the matriarch's birthday. It's the matriarch's birthday. And then 6 days later is the older sibling's birthday. And she's going to be the big 5-0. But anyway, yeah, it's been a heck of a summer full of birthdays. Now, were things able to be were we able to get things done, in the house that was needed? Yeah, to an extent. I mean, as I've shown you before, I got a picture up, a 49er picture up that my grandpa had one time in his trophy room, as he calls it, or his collectible room. Basically, like I said, I've shown you it before. It's basically it's kind of a makeshift thing that you would get, like at, let's say, those flea markets and stuff. It's got the 49er coins and everything, and cards and all that. So have that hung up. The matriarch wanted to get bookshelves and everything because they got books, so they ended up getting those, and I put them together for them. And of course, this was one of the last summers that my third oldest nephew would be spending with us for a week, or at least a couple of days, because that's what they would do annually. They would spend for at least a couple of days, if not a week, maybe 2 at most. To kind of just get out of the house and get to be around other members of the family. So. Yeah, it was one of the last summers, if not the last summer, because they're going to college within a month at UC Santa Barbara. But yeah, it's been one heck of a summer, and as far as the content creation goes, like I said, I started fine, tried to get ahead, but then fell off. But hopefully things will be fine going forward. And as far as working goes, like I said, the positive for me was, just around my birthday, or a little after my birthday, I was able to get an interview with the SB place. I had to go to Los Banos for it, and I haven't heard from them yet. They said I would be getting an email or a phone call before then. And hopefully I'll be getting that real soon. I mean, I have been getting phone calls, but they've been more numbers with different area codes from different states and all that. So it's really tricky, if you will, to kind of decipher which is which. I mean, usually they will say, hey, here, this is who's calling you on the ID. But anyway, long story short, it's going to be quite. I'm trying to find the right words to say. This is what happens when you're doing this uncut and unscripted, and of course trying to do it as quickly as you can with opportunity that you have. But basically, it's been one of those summers and everything to where you just got to work with what you have and be thankful for the opportunities that you're given. That's all I know. And I do know that this past summer I celebrated 17 years, so thank you guys for that. But I also know it's a summer to where a lot of folks just were not thrilled with the idea that the YT is going to be rolling out this AI, this AI age verification deal. And I've talked about it, others have talked about it. The only people I think that are truly mad about this are those that have not really completely understood what it's doing, but it's also mainly the young kids, the teenagers, that are going to be factored into this, because basically, their days of lying about their age and all that pretty much is over, and they got to basically face the music. We'll put it that way. But that's about it, guys. That's all I can really say, as much as I can. I know I sound like I rambled a little bit, but I wanted to give you guys a bit of a vlog as to what's been going on over this past week, as well as how the summer went, summer break session, the yearly annual summer break session, as well as let you know how things are going to be going forward and all that. And again, keep it in your prayers that I get work either at the distributing center back in Patterson, or I get into the new SB coffee place here in Newman. But guys, that's about it. That's all I'm going to say. So until next time, let me know what your thoughts are overall in the comment section. Like the video, ringing the bell for notification. Subscribe to the channel. Also, click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere outside of YouTube. As well as click on the link at the bottom of the description box to go to my Teespring store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. But guys, until next time, I will talk to y'all later. And until then, I am out.